I beg you. My mind is all I have. I spent my whole life trying to fill it.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to the channel. If this is your first time, please have my blessing to look back at the old videos and go, oh, he's done one on that, has he? And have a look. That'd be great. But anyway, in the meantime, this is a video that is probably a really stupid idea and will require lots of editing. So clearly I'm in an editing mood because you're not going to see my face for some of this video. Oh, that's nice. So this is a video that I'm calling 70 books I want to read before I'm 70. So you've seen many people like 35-year-old booktubers doing 40 books I want to read before I'm 40. You've seen 43-year-old booktubers, possibly 49-year-old booktubers doing 50 books I want to read before I'm 50. You've seen 7-year-old booktubers do the 10 books I want to read before I'm 10. All of these videos have inspired me to do 70 books I want to read before I'm 70. So I've got 16 years to read these books. So that's an average of 4 books a year from this list. So it's quite possible I might be able to make this happen if I can really concentrate and commit to this challenge of reading these books. So I need 4 books a year. So that's just of these books. That's an average of about 1,700 pages a year. So that's not a lot. And in minutes, that's a good 22 days. That's a good 22 days. So 70 books that I want to read before I'm 70. I'm going to read out all of these books. These are genuinely books I want to read. So in some ways, this is really stupid, but in other ways, this is me talking about the books I want to read. So please comment on these if you think, oh, definitely read that one. Read that one before you're 56, you know. Maybe you'll say, oh, that Kurt Vonnegut book, you need to read that before you're 54. Maybe you might say, that Anne Rice book, leave that till you're 67. You know, please give me the recommendation and the age at which you think I will appreciate that the most. Okay, so I've got 16 years to go to read these, so I've got to really concentrate, really commit to this. But here we are. This is a list of 70 books that I want to read before I'm 70. Okay, so first one, Stepford Wives by Ira Levin. I read Rosemary's Baby recently, and I've got a feeling I'm going to like Stepford Wives even more than that. But yeah, it's very good. Underground Railroad by Colson Whitehead. Massively applauded book, and something I've had in my collection for a little while. Definitely need to read it. I think it's something I really connect to and like. Player Piano by Kurt Vonnegut. Player Piano was his, I think that was his first novel, and it's something I hunted down for quite a while, and I found it hard to get at first, and I've got it, and I haven't had a great success with Kurt Vonnegut, but I'm reading this one as not necessarily my last attempt to like him, but the next attempt to like him. Next one is Perks of Being a Wallflower. This was the one that kicked off MJ's Banned Books event challenge, and that's by Stefan Chbosky, and I'm definitely looking forward to reading that one. I'm actually going to read that soon. Company of Liars by Karen Maitland. So this is a historical novel one set in during the Black Death, and the Black Death is something I'm really interested in as an historian, so I definitely want to read that, and I actually want to delve a little bit more into historical fiction as well in the next 16 years. A Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin. So I have the whole series, but I haven't actually read them yet because I wanted to see the series first, and I just haven't got around to it since the series finished. And yeah, definitely going to read that at some point. Half of a Yellow Sun by Adichie. So this is one also I bought recently, and I want to read this for that kind of perspective that you get from reading other people's lives and other people's cultures. So that's definitely one I want to read. The Selfish Gene by Richard Dawkins. So that's more of an educational one, but something I definitely want to read, by Rich Dawkins. What We Talk About When We Talk About Love by Raymond Carver. So this is one I've recently bought, actually, a short story collection that I think is one of his most famous pieces of work. So I definitely want to read that. And I want to do more about short stories on my channel. So I've tried to do a little bit about that and tried to feature more short stories in my monthly wrap-ups. But I want to do more features on short story collections and that. Okay, the next one is a Philip K. Dick book, Valis. So I've read quite a few Philip K. Dick books, but I haven't read Valis yet. And that's one I want to get to next in my Philip K. Dick exploration. I've read about half a dozen Philip K. Dick books. Rendezvous with Rama, Arthur C. Clarke. This is one I should have read by now. I really like Childhood's End a lot. And I think out of those sort of the original classics, science fiction writers, Arthur C. Clarke is one of the ones I like the most. And that's not true for Asimov, who's the next one on this list, I, Robot, Asimov. So I've read Asimov before, and I think he's a bit of a clunky writer. I don't think he's someone who comes up with really good ideas, but he's not a natural writer. He could have written, well, he did write some non-fiction, actually. So, yeah, it almost reads like non-fiction and stuff. Yeah, I want to read I, Robot, because I delved a little bit when I was younger in that particular series, but I didn't find his writing particularly inviting, so I didn't get very far. But I'm going to try I, Robot again. Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke. Definitely want to read this. It's a big chunker, but I think I'm going to really like it. So that's one on my list for the next 16 years. The Killer Inside Me by Jim Thompson. I've actually got a different one. I think it's called Pop 1980. I've got that one by him, which I'll probably end up reading first because I own it. But I do want to read The Killer Inside Me. And the next one is called Six of Crows by Lee Bardugo. That's one that I think I'm going to really like a lot. It's a YA novel, I think, fantasy book. But I love the premise, and it's the sort of thing that I think I just really enjoy as a little bit of a fun romp. So that's one I want to read. Something that isn't a fun romp, I don't think, but something I definitely need to get to. I've read many, many, many Stephen King books. I've talked about Stephen King a lot on my channel, but I haven't yet read It. So It is on this list as well. I will definitely get that. I'll get to that possibly next year, actually. But that's on this list. Another one that I really want to read, and something that I know it quite well because of seeing it live, but I'd love to read it, and that's Matilda by Roald Dahl. And Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. That's another one I want to read. And I think I'm going to like it. I don't normally like books from that particular period, but there's something about it that kind of beckons me towards reading it. So there's that one. One that I am definitely expecting to really like, and that's Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck. And the next one on this list is actually East of Eden by John Steinbeck. So both of those books I really want to read, and I'm sure I'm going to love them, but I haven't got to them yet. But I've read lots of other John Steinbeck books, and I think he's amazing. He's one of my favourite writers, but I've only read shorter books. I've read about 6 of his shorter books. So I need to read those too. Also, The Master and Margarita by Mikhail Bulgakov. So I've read The Heart of a Dog, really enjoyed it, but The Master and Margarita is the one that is hugely celebrated, so that's definitely one I want to read. Daphne du Maurier's Jamaica Inn. That's another one that I've bought, and I've recently read some short stories by her and really liked it. So I'm looking forward to reading that. Definitely want to read Jamaica Inn. It was really cool going to Jamaica Inn, actually, in Cornwall. That was really nice because obviously I knew the backstory with the book. So it was nice going there with the family. This is one that I'm expecting to get to in the next few weeks, actually. And that's Margaret Atwood's Handmaid's Tale. I still haven't read it, but I'm reading it for part of the band project, and it's just about time I've read it. So Handmaid's Tale is one that's in my Hall of Shame, to be fair. I should have read that by now. So can't wait to read that one. The Portrait of Dorian Gray. I have almost read this a few times by Oscar Wilde. I don't know if I like it or not, but I want to read it. I want to find out. If I don't like it, it'll probably be the style of prose, probably. But I'm definitely going to dive in and see what I think at some point. Anne Rice, Interview with a Vampire. So an absolute classic that gets talked about a lot, a hugely influential book, and one that I'm kind of expecting to like. I hope I like that one. Yeah, I think I'm going to like it. I don't know. We'll see. Another vampire one, and one that I've seen the film of. I mean, I've seen the film of Interview with a Vampire, but I've seen the film of this one, and I absolutely love this film. And that's Let the Right One In by John Arvid Lindqvist. I really, really love that film. So I'm looking forward to reading the book. I'm sure the book's better just because often the book is better, but we'll find out. It's an incredible film. S.A. Cosby. So I've been raving about one of his books, but I've only actually read one of his books. So this is a chance to read something else by him, and that's Blacktop Wasteland. I've got in this list. It's just the one that I've owned, that I've bought. I'm kind of buy his stuff as I go along. Blacktop Wasteland, I'm expecting to absolutely love because the first one I read was just phenomenal. Still in the crime direction, The Big Sleep by Raymond Chandler. That's one I want to read. Another one I own but haven't read yet, and I'm expecting to really enjoy it. And Dashiell Hammett's Maltese Falcon as well. I don't actually own this one, but I'm going to read this at some point as well. Rage in Harlem by Chester Himes. I've got tons of Chester Himes books, and because I found loads secondhand. One particular visit to Oxfam, and I bought the whole lot because I really enjoyed Cotton Comes to Harlem. So I'm going to read his most famous book, Rage in Harlem. So that's on this list. Patricia Highsmith's Talented Mr. Ripley. So again, I haven't read anything by her before, so I'm looking forward to reading that one. And Strangers on a Train as well. Strangers on a Train, famously adapted by Hitchcock. I know the Hitchcock film. I know the plot, but I'm looking forward to seeing how Patricia Highsmith writes it. This is one that I'm going to deliberately go in blind. I know some vague things about it, but I'm going to see what it's like as a reading experience, and that's John Updike's The World According to Garp. That's one I've always sort of wondered about. Another sort of classic, modern classic from that kind of period, and that's Ken Casey's One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I've mentioned this book a few times. I've got a very close relationship with the concept of the One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest because of seeing it on live in a theatre with Christian Slater playing Mike, and the film as well, which I've seen so many times. I absolutely love it. So I'm really hoping that the book will shine because I absolutely love the other things I've seen of Cuckoo's Nest. Naked Lunch by William Burroughs. So Naked Lunch is one that I don't really know if I like it or not, but I definitely want to read it. William Burroughs has got a very specific and significant reputation, so it'll be interesting to see what I think of Naked Lunch. A couple of James Baldwin ones here. Another Country by James Baldwin. So I've mentioned that I want to read this a few times, but I haven't done it yet. So James Baldwin's Another Country. And then another one I want to read, another one I own as well, Go Tell It on the Mountain by James Baldwin. That's another one for this list that I'm going to read soon. This is one I don't know a lot about, but it's kind of, I don't know, related to, in my head, it's related to it in the theme here of these modern classics. And that's The Confederacy of Dunces by John Kennedy Toole. So let me know if you think I should read that. That's definitely one on my list. This is one I almost started last month, and then it just got superseded by something else, and that's Donna Tartt's The Secret History. So that's another one I want to read. This one, I don't know what I'm going to think, but I'm curious. I'm really curious. And that's Disgrace by J.M. Coates. So we'll see. I think it sounds like a really intense read. Could be a bit too much, but we'll find out. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, you've got Edgar Rice Burroughs' Tarzan of the Apes. This is a book that I keep meaning to read, and I haven't read it yet. Tarzan, Lord of the Apes is definitely on my list. And another one I nearly read a couple of months ago, but I'm still going to read that very soon, actually, and that's George Orwell's Homage to Catalonia, which is about his experience in the Spanish Civil War. So definitely want to read that. And I'm going to try and do a proper full-on dive into George Orwell as well in the next couple of years. Kingsley Amis's Lucky Jim. Another one that I know a little bit about, but I'm deliberately going to try and go in relatively blind. I know what kind of thing to expect, but yeah, I'm letting myself forget that a little bit and not double checking again. So Lucky Jim by Kingsley Amis. Three Men in a Boat. It's by Jerome K. Jerome. So I'm curious about this one because Mark from Book Time with Elvis loves it. It's his favourite book. I don't know if the humour is going to be my kind of humour, but we'll find out. The next one is, well, the next two are two of my daughter's favourite books. So I asked her what her three favourite books were, because I'm going to read them, a little project. At some point, I'm going to read my daughter's three favourite books, and one of them is one of my favourite books, which is Frankenstein. So I will reread that when I read these other two. But the first one is Wolf Den by Elodie Harper. She absolutely loves that author and that book. And the other one is The Virgin Suicides by Jeffrey Eugenides. I've seen the film actually, but my daughter says the film is like a travesty compared to the book. So okay, fair enough. I'll check out the book. And then another one I've written down, which I don't know, it feels like a little bit of a what do they call it? I can't remember what the term is, but it's something that I've been putting off, and I don't own it, but I've almost bought it a few times, and I've been too scared to buy it or something. I'm not sure what it is, but it's Titus Grown by Mervyn Peake. So this is the first book of the Gormenghast series, but I definitely want to read the three Gormenghast books, basically. But I think, well, I get the impression that they're really densely written, so I don't know if it's my kind of prose style, but we'll find out. But I definitely want to read that at some point. Also, next one on the list is Ian Banks' The Wasp Factory. So quite a nasty book from what I've heard, but I definitely want to read it. But there's lots of Ian M. Banks stuff that I own as well, the science fiction stuff. But The Wasp Factory will be the first thing I read by him. This is one, this author, I've read lots of stuff by her, but not this, which is We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson. So definitely want to read that as part of this project. And another Roald Dahl one, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. So this is a book that I obviously know the story really well because of the films, but I'd love to read it to see how Roald Dahl tells the story. He's such a good storyteller. Okay, so on my continuing adventures in graphic novels, I want to read Batman Hush. That's written by Jeff Loeb, who did actually write The Long Halloween as well, which I recently read and talked about on the channel. That was brilliant. And I also want to read Batman Year One, written by Frank Miller, who his claim to fame was kicking off part of the whole revitalizing of graphic novels with the Dark Knight Returns book, which I did read years ago. But Batman Year One is supposed to be really good. So Frank Miller's Batman Year One. Another one, going back to normal prose books, Earth Abides. This is a post-apocalyptic book that I really want to read. It's part of my Hall of Shame books, if you like. There's a couple here. This next one is also from the Hall of Shame, and that's Revelation Space by Alistair Reynolds. I haven't read that yet. I've been a little bit intimidated by it, but I want to read it. I've read other books by Alistair Reynolds, and I should have read Revelation Space by now. The next one on the list is by Connie Willis, and that's To Say Nothing of the Dog. So I really like the first book in that series, the Doomsday book, and this is the second one. It's supposed to be a lot more humorous, and definitely want to read that. Apparently it's got references to Three Men in a Boat in it, so I'm going to read that before I read To Say Nothing of the Dog. And kind of related to that, Mark from Book Time with Elvis, we were talking about buddy reading those as well. So we'll find out. We'll see. That might happen. A big, ambitious one here that people keep recommending to me, and I'm going to tackle this within the next 16 years. And that's The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexander Dumas. And then you've got Lee Brackett. Lee Brackett is someone I really want to look into a lot more anyway, but I've written down The Long Tomorrow, which is one of her SF Masterworks books. And another science fiction classic that is a funny one because I think I've read about 16 books by this guy, and he's one of my favorites, but I haven't read this one, and that's Harry Harrison and West of Eden. So definitely need to read West of Eden. It's a trilogy, but obviously I'm just going to write the first one down. Definitely need to read West of Eden. A fantasy book by an author that I'm really getting into, and that's Powell Anderson's The Broken Sword. So this is seen as a fantasy classic, even though it appears to be the case that Poul Anderson's written more science fiction than fantasy, but he's written this really seminal work in fantasy that's been really influential and highly applauded. This one's a Robin Hobb book, so I want to read more Robin Hobb, and next February I'm going to be reading my first ever Robin Hobb, which might be this one at some point soon. I'm going to be reading lots of J.G. Ballard, but I've written down Crash because it's the most controversial one. It's the one that it's going to be a potential talking point on the channel. When I do read it, I might have something to say about it. I don't know, it might be like Fight Club where I read it and don't really know what to say about it and don't feel like I'm going to be able to be particularly interesting when I'm talking about it. So who knows? But I'm going to read that soon, and I'm going to read a lot of J.G. Ballard in the next year, 2 years. The next one is Neville Shute's On the Beach. So another post-apocalyptic book and another influential, famous, classic, celebrated book. The next one is another science fiction classic, Brian Aldiss's Earthworks, a book that I've had for a while. I've had a copy of it for a while, but haven't got around to it yet. This is going away from science fiction for a minute, and this is quite a new book, but something I definitely want to put on my TBR, and that's Trees by Percival Everett. Again, very celebrated book, and I know that soon I'll be reading Erasure, and I've just got a feeling I'm going to really like what he does. This is a book that I saw the film of it, and it's one of my favourite films, and I want to read the book that started the film, and that's The Mosquito Coast by Paul Theroux. I've just got a feeling I'm going to love it, but who knows? It's obviously about the prose style as well, but I certainly love the story. And then the Christopher Priest book. I've read some Christopher Priest, but I haven't read this one, and that's The Inverted World. So that's one that I need to get to, and I own it, so it shouldn't be too hard to get to it. I just need to put it on my radar. So Christopher Priest's Inverted World. And then a Joe Haldeman book that is part of that pile of Joe Haldeman books that I mentioned before on my channel. And for this list, I've picked The Long Habit of Living because it's got a really interesting plot, and definitely want to make that one of the next Joe Haldeman books. So I've read about 5 or 6 of his books up to now, so I haven't got a list anywhere, but I think it's either 5 or 6 books by him. I really like him. Equally, another author I've got loads of books by them and I want to read more of. So I've read some already, but I want to read more of them, and that's Alan Dean Foster, and that's Midworld. So Midworld, I know, is one of his celebrated science fiction books. He's a really good writer, so I'm hoping I'll love that one. So a bit of fun, I think, by the looks of it, but definitely it'll be well written because he's a good writer. So there's that one. And then the last two, this one I was absolutely shocked when I found it in a shop. I didn't even know it existed. Didn't know this author had actually written a book, because he's more famous as a screenwriter and film director. And this is Charlie Kaufman. Charlie Kaufman's written a novel called Antkind, and I grabbed it as soon as I saw it. I couldn't believe it, and I was very excited to own it, but I haven't actually got to it. And part of the reason is that I feel like it might be quite depressing, knowing what his filmmaking has been like since the early days of when he did adaptation, and being John Malkovich, which is a work of genius, I think. So yeah, I don't think it's going to be as crazy as John Malkovich, and it's going to be I expect it's probably going to be like more depressing, like his most recent films. But I definitely want to read it because he's a really interesting man, I think. And then the last one for this list, what I want to read before I'm 70, and that's The Forsaken Boy by the great and celebrated Troy Tradup. So there we are. So that's a list of 70 books that I want to read before I'm 70. I better get on with it, and I wish me luck. Stay curious.
Paint me a picture of what it's like to be